So, about the film, this has brought a certain amount of attention to Prince George's County, and obviously from the history. Did you expect this level of acknowledgement and response to the film?
Thanks for asking, Raul, and nice to see you. No, it's been kind of unexpected. So we've gotten a very nice reaction from the community, particularly the employees who shared all these experiences with me at Southern Maryland Hospital. But new to me is the film festival rounds, and we've been in 8 or 10.
Approximately 8.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gotten some positive feedback and won a few awards for this documentary about Dr. Chiaramonte.
Do you think that's as a result of the community kind of seeing this story, having lived it, or is that because the film is really taking them into the story?
Yeah. No, I think it's more about the universality of this story that's appealing to a broader audience. And this has been the surprise. We knew we had something that employees would like. We knew we had something that was designed for the family as a memoir. But we weren't able to gauge until we went to the film festivals what kind of broader reaction from people who have no idea who Dr. Chiaramonte is or can't point on a map where Southern Maryland is. And so that's been really kind of heartwarming and rewarding. And really a lot, and I'd say more for Stan, because yeah, it's about my father's life, but it tells you that the assembly of this story and the editing and the production of this movie is sort of good enough that folks are rapt and interested and paying attention. And so we've gotten a lot of positive feedback.
That brings me to my next question. How did you come together on the span of the story? How to tell the story? How to get from point A to point B with the story?
Well, I'll just jump in on that one. It takes a while. It started with like 30 interviews, and we didn't necessarily go into this film with the intent of going into film festivals. It was really for that private audience. But then as I began to listen to the responses in those interviews and edit it together in a rough form, and shared it with some people that didn't know Dr. Chiaramonte, we saw that perhaps, there's people outside that could find value and interest in the story. So, so with that, I tried to put it together in a fashion that wasn't necessarily like a linear chronology of his life.
Right.
I wanted to do something that would draw the audience in, and you have to have a hook, in a way. And so we created that first act of the film to basically draw the audience in so they would, connect emotionally with Dr. Chiaramonte's character.
And there are these, again, universal draws. So you have an immigrant story, there's a Marylander story. There's kind of an up from the bootstraps person who grew up virtually in poverty, kind of being successful and following his dream. So I think there's a lot for people to grab onto if you didn't know Dr. Chiaramonte.
And having to pull all those strings together, as you said, 30 interviews, and then the timeline that you came up with, and you got to deal with a budget, you got to deal with some kind of constraint. How did it come together for the two of you working together? I imagine for the first time.
We actually have worked together.
Many years.
Informally in other ways, right? So
Right.
Stan's first job out of college, and we were college buddies, was at Southern Maryland Hospital. And we were at the stage when sort of video production, digital production was just being sort of invented, I think. Or maybe the technology hasn't changed.
First things we shot were VHS.
There you go.
Back in 1984.
But the organization, the hospital organization, needed a department to help us with our mostly internal training videos. This video that you see in the movie of Dr. Chiaramonte was an orientation video that Stan
For
actually...
employees, yeah.
For employees, that Stan actually produced and put together. So that was very helpful because Stan was in the culture, not so long, a couple of years?
Yeah, 2.5 years.
2.5, but enough to understand this vibrant character, the strong character, Dr. Chiaramonte, and that the rest of the organization was like a big family around this strong sort of father figure. And so Stan kind of had that, so he knew when it was time to put this together. Now, flash forward, 35 years, he had a good sense for what he was after. So it was helpful. So we've done that together. Along the way, also Stan produced a few commercial ads for us.
It was really about 10 years almost of commercial campaigns that we would update annually. So I was still around the hospital. Michael and I remained friends, throughout this whole time. So I always had that connection, and I got to know Dr. C obviously personally, and I was glad he liked me, and he was always someone I admired. And so I was honored when Michael asked me to get involved and do this.
Definitely. I can completely understand that. What do you want the viewer to take from the film?
That answer might be different between us.
I'll go. I want them to realize the power that one person has to change a community, to change people's lives. What one person, what was the quote that he gave to Fran? One applied person.
Apply yourself.
Apply yourself. Well, Dr. Chiaramonte really applied himself, and he changed the lives of so many people in this area. And you can see what's possible when you apply yourself.
Right.
So for me, that would be the number one thing I would like people to take from it.
So for me, the origin of the purpose of this film was really to honor the man specifically, Dr. Chiaramonte. So yeah, we have an immigrant story, and yes, we have a rags to riches story. But the sense at the beginning when we wanted to do this as a family was, let's record Dad's brilliant history. Let's get this memoir on film, and let's have folks close to him talk about it and just capture that. So really still the number one objective for me was to make a family memoir and a story that we could pass along now to generations of grandchildren, and they can get a sense for how special their granddaddy was.
You think you got that?
I think we achieved it.
All right. How do you think he would have felt about the film?
Well, consistent with what my brother says in the film, he wasn't much about adulation. He didn't take praise very well. He had a good, healthy ego, but the act of being praised was always uncomfortable for him, which also might explain why his philanthropy was quiet. He didn't want the adulation that comes with it. What he would say about giving money away is, that's easy. Making the money is hard. Someone wants to applaud me for building this hospital and sort of making it, fine. Anybody can write a check.
For you, working on a project like this, Stan, tell us what we know what the motivation was, but what's the reward? Have you reached what you were hoping to gain?
Well, yeah, I think so, because as a filmmaker, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's a commercial or a corporate video, whatever it is, or a documentary film, I focus on the audience. That's the first question I always ask. Well, who is the audience? Who are we trying to reach? And so initially, we'd find that audience as Michael's family, co-workers, the people associated with the hospital, and folks from that Southern Maryland area. But then it kind of grew. So for me, I feel like I'm really gratified that people that did not know Dr. Chiaramonte still found this interesting, and that we were able to share his story, and so that was very satisfying for me to find that there was an audience larger than we initially anticipated.
Mm-hmm. And did you think it would be where it is now? Award-winning?
Yeah, I did, because I'm pretty good at it.
Stan did a beautiful job.
But I worked really hard at it, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I just wanted it to be good enough to reach that. And Michael let the film kind of grow in its scope in order to do that.
And there's some real nice pieces in this film. Not to say that they're only nice pieces, but some actual footage from the period. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So my biggest job really on this film, and the only part I'll take credit for, is finding pictures, video, real life footage. I'd steer a little bit on who to talk to. I'm going to know those people, more closely than Stan would. It was really kind of my role, really kind of the research, and so some of that old footage from the 60s and 70s were old Super 8 VHF reels of my brothers and sisters and I growing up, and it was really special to see that, and again have those captured forever, digitized, not decaying in some canister somewhere, for our family to enjoy.
Right. Let me jump in on one part of that story too, because part of the filming was done at Dr. Karamati's home in Shelter Island, New York. And the family still owns that home today. Right across the street is the Shelter Island Historic Society. And so they helped us find some of the photographs from that era when Dr. Karamati was a young boy growing up there. And they also found this 16 millimeter film of the parade that we actually kind of recreated, right? So they were instrumental in giving me that film, which I later had digitized, and we tried to kind of recreate that in the opening of the film.
And did so brilliantly.
Yeah, so that was cool. That was from 1930s.
So two old pieces of moving picture really kind of anchor the film, right? You start with that Shelter Island Historical Society 16 millimeter film of the old parade, and that parade was a rendition of the landing of the white man, as it were, on Shelter Island. So they were sort of like Quakers or something. And that's why you saw riding in that beautiful old automobile a person with a Native American headdress, and sort of someone looks like a Thanksgiving Quaker, right? And so that was the celebration, because that island was founded that way in the late 16s. And so I thought Stan did a beautiful job recreating that. That was new art, right? That wasn't talking heads. That was a production that Stan had to put together and find a place that looked just like Shelter Island. It wasn't all filmed on Shelter Island. You didn't want to bring the whole crew up there. But we brought some of the crew up there and did get a lot of beautiful footage of Shelter, those beach shots and all the beautiful footage of Shelter Island.
And we shot that in Havre de Grace, Maryland, which is like northeast Harford County. And it did kind of look like it. I do just want to talk a little bit of the inspiration for that, and that was Michael's brother Fran. When we interviewed him, he told this great story about Dr. Karamati's inspiration to become a physician. And after I listened to that, that's when I went to Michael and I said, he tells a great story about why your dad wanted to become a doctor. I think it would be a great way to open the film and hook people into the story. And to Michael's credit, he said, yes, let's do it. And I was really happy, to have that opportunity to do that scene.
That was wonderful.
Because I think that does draw people in.
That definitely does.
Yeah.
It definitely does.
And it expanded the budget a little bit. We had to pay actors.
And that was also good for me.
Had to pay the city, and so Stan was directing. What you have, 50, 80, 100 people out on the shoot that day?
I think we had a cast of maybe 60 people, cast and crew 60 people, and it was really hot. It was incredible. It was one of the hottest days of the year.
And of course, I think you were referring to the anecdote about how your dad was firsthand as a child saw how health and health care.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that scene so that?
Yeah. I think to that 10-year-old set of eyes on Shelter Island, where you had one physician, there was only about 300 residents on Little Shelter Island. Little Island, perhaps 5 miles by 3 miles in size. One doc did everything, right? General practitioner, set the leg, delivered the babies, would even help veterinary issues go, set the leg of the cow, right? And so he was the hero in town. And it was so pointed at that moment where no one else knew what to do to the man that had fallen over and passed out at the parade, that it became powerful in my father's eyes. That this is like a superhero swooping in, saving this person's life. I want to be that. I want to do that. And you talk to doctors, and they'll often tell you there was a singular experience in their life. Hey, when did you decide to be a doctor? Often about themselves. Oh, we got in a car accident, my legs were blown up, and the docs, and that was so impactful in my life. Not an uncommon story to have a medical occurrence inspire a physician to do that. But I was speaking earlier about, edit this part in, about two pieces of film that sort of anchor. And the second one, of course, was the orientation film of Dr. Caramonte. Jump us up or something. Was the orientation film of Dr. Caramonte, filmed in 1984. And so that was an efficiency play for Dad. He wanted to be the voice and talk directly to the employees, but he knew he wasn't always going to be able to do that. And so he said, hey, Stan, come down here and film this and capture it, and I'll do my full dog and pony show, and then we'll just play this for orientation. That, I think, was another critical piece of moving film that we return to periodically. And Stan uses it to reinforce points made, I noticed. So one of the speakers will talk about Dad's characteristic, and then he'll display that very characteristic in that orientation film. And I thought it was a powerful way he handled that.
Yeah, it's critical. Having Dr. Caramonte himself was so important to the film. There's nothing better than having a first-person account.
Right, absolutely. This kind of truth is so much stronger than fiction in so many ways, and having the actual hero, that superhero, on set, so to speak, really makes it kind of come together, bring it to life. So you mentioned budget. Got to talk about it just a little bit. I believe this might be your first foray into developing a project like this. And budget was probably one thing going in. But as usual with film, it's kind of a different thing once you're in it. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's true. You try to set some kind of limit to the resources expended when you go into a project like this. But more important to this project was the product. There was a certain level of quality and a certain history that I wanted captured, and it didn't matter really the price in the end. That we wanted to achieve sort of that level, and I think Stan, nailed it at not a very large price. I got a feeling if I went to some other commercial studio that I would have paid a great deal more money. I think Stan did it, on the cheap, inexpensively as he could. Still have to pay all those others, but he probably underbilled himself a little bit. There was hundreds of hours of editing that surely he wasn't billing me on an hourly basis for, so we appreciate that. We put it together at not too giant a number.
And I was able to take my time, which also helped with that. It wasn't like I had a deadline, to meet, which oftentimes accelerates a budget. It was the kind of thing that I worked on when I didn't have other commercial work, that was pending. So that was, so it was, it was a 3 or 4 year process. Yeah. So that helped.
But did you come within a certain? What's the number? Do we have a number that we have a card call?
He wants to know the number.
idea.
I'll give you that. I mean, the classic line when anyone asks that to a filmmaker is, well, it was under $1 million, or it was under $5 million, or it was under a certain amount. It was I'll say this. I'm not going to say the number because it's not my place, but many documentary filmmakers, it's a passion project, and many of them are not funded. It's all done on their own.
Right.
And so I did have the opportunity of having someone who was going to fund and pay for some of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big opportunity, and so I was fortunate to have that,
Right.
because not every filmmaker has that. They're big, borrow, and steal to get their film made.
Right.
Yeah.
did the budget work well enough for you to consider doing something like this again? How about that? Does that make it easier?
Yeah. I'm not sure it's the budget and our success or failure with the budget,
Okay.
but the process was very interesting to me. This
Okay.
was new to me. I've not been involved in a film, documentary, or feature film. Extremely interesting process. Enjoyed it very much. Enjoyed being with my friend Stan during the process. It's a creative process. You're making something from nothing,
Right.
and I'm always interested in that. And so, creative juices are flowing, and there's a discussion with Stan about the possibility of future work.
Outstanding. That's a good sign. That's a good thing. And so, last question. A lot of different things happening in the industry that you both are in. Right? And people say, we've kind of reached the hilt. There's no new frontier. There's no new maverick opportunity. Is that true for both of you in your respective?
In the film industry? Well, I think there's more and more opportunity these days than perhaps ever before with the new streaming services and on top of traditional, television and cable television, things like YouTube. There's just more opportunities for your work to get out there. However, with that, there's more content being pushed out, and so there's more to cut through. You know what I mean? So to get yourself noticed, I think takes more work. It's harder in some respects. It's easier to get it out there so people can see it, but to actually get it noticed, probably even more difficult than it was years ago. Years ago, you could make an independent film, and since there weren't that many made, it might get noticed. It might get some press. These days, there's literally 7,000 film festivals across the world. So there's a lot of filmmakers out there.
And where do you stand? How are you doing?
Well, I love it, and I'm hoping to do more. And I've been doing it, professionally for a long time. But this is actually my first documentary and or feature. So I hope to do more in that genre.
Good.
Yeah. So I'm developing a few things and have pitched a few ideas with Michael, and we'll continue to talk about it, and perhaps we'll do something.
Good stuff.
Yeah, look, it's kind of a technical question, so I would have to agree with Stan on it, that from a user standpoint, there's so much more content available and therefore needed at all these sort of tiers, far more tiers of access to content, right? You've got your commercial movie theaters for the top movies, but there's 100 other ways to see films now, right? Right on your phone, through all the electronic outlets, these film festivals. And so I think there's a niche and a place for sort of any level film that has a good story and is technically competent.
But in health, in healthcare.
Oh, healthcare
Right,
specifically.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And I ask because your dad, he's a bit of a maverick. He basically knocks some walls down to make some things happen, to make a better place.
Yeah.
And he charted something where nothing was before.
Sure.
And so this is why I asked the question of both of you,
I see.
in terms of that maverick spirit, that can-do pioneering spirit. And I get the sense that you are taking some of that spirit in your own right with some of the things you're working on.
Yep. Always try to continue to grow and serve the community healthcare-wise. And right now I'm working on a physical therapy company called ProFlex Physical Therapy, and it's going along well. That's another service that needs to be in the communities, close to people's homes, so they can get access to it. So I'll always be involved in care delivery. I was born into it, and it's what I know, and it's what I know how to do. Filmmaking for me, as opposed to Stan, where it's his life, for me it's icing, it's an extra, it's something of interest, almost a hobby. And so we'll probably continue, and you'll see us come out with most likely a short or two before too long.
It's not too late for modeling.
I think maybe like 25 years.
I'll say this about the healthcare, even though my background is certainly not in healthcare, though I did work in that environment, support in terms of marketing, advertising. But I think Michael said it. You couldn't do what Dr. Caramonte did today. It's not possible. You could not take that maverick spirit and create what he created the way he did it. It couldn't happen that way today. And I think that's one of the things that made his story so unique. It was really hard to do when he did it. And today it just couldn't be duplicated, in my opinion.
So in that way, it's a period piece because the regulatory environment has gotten that much tougher.
Yeah.
The political environment has gotten that much grabbier, I'll use that word. And so the ability for him to navigate that, he sort of barely snuck through then. I think now those forces are so strong, it would have been darn near impossible. Yeah, darn
All
near
the more
impossible.
reason why the film is so important.
Yeah, thank you.
It's the rare person that could have done what Frank Caramonte did.
Dr. Caramonte just looked at the fact that we didn't have a first-class healthcare facility and decided he was going to do something about the problem.
He said this many times. We're 9 miles outside of the nation's capital, and the care down this way is absolutely third world.
He was determined to make things happen. Clinton was a growing community. People expected quality health care, and that was not being provided.
Not everybody wanted this hospital to go up.
He had landmines and roadblocks placed in front of him every step of the way.
They were planning to take my father's life.
You needed somebody who had the guts to fight that through.
He wasn't really there to be your friend. He was there to fulfill this vision.
When he gets determined to do something, you better believe it's going to happen.
When he entered the room, the whole room would immediately go quiet.
Folks, I'm Dr. Caramonte, and I'd like to tell you something about the background of this hospital because no one's given you the facts. So I'm here to hopefully give you the facts from day one.